It's been an off-season of change for the Nashville Predators, a new coach, some new players, and a new outlook. And Kimmel of Locked On Predators is here to talk about that and more next on the Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome, everybody, to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you can get new episodes as soon as they drop. And you can also find us on SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just do a search for Locked On NHL. It is great to bring back to the show the co-host of Locked On Predators, Ann Kimmel. And Ann, it has certainly been an eventful offseason for the Predators, a new GM, a new coach, a new direction. How do you think the coaching change will affect the way the Predators approach the game this fall?
I think that's one of the biggest questions that fans are asking themselves. We haven't heard a ton from Andrew Brunette yet. You know, we heard from him at the press conference where he was introduced. And one of the things that is very clear is that the Nashville Predators are looking for him to take this team in a little bit different direction, looking to play a faster game, looking to score a little bit more off the rush, looking to be more offensive. So that's the overview of what we're looking at with Andrew Brunette. But he's also coming into a roster with tons of turnover. So how that's all going to play out is going to make for a really interesting training camp.
No question about it. And certainly for the returning players, I would assume there's going to be a learning curve and an adjustment period. How about some of the new players that, you know, this team has added? Ryan O'Reilly, Gustav, Nyquist, where do they fit in, and how do they fit into the idea of being faster and scoring more off the rush?
Yeah, the Predators made a ton of moves. The minute free agency opened, Barry Trotz was on the phone. Of course, kind of the biggest to get for the Nashville Predators is Ryan O'Reilly. And one of the things that Trotz really highlighted with this signing of O'Reilly is not just on ice, which there is a lot of upside to Ryan O'Reilly on ice, but what he brings to a team that is also trying to develop some young players. So we're talking about somebody who has Stanley Cup experience, somebody who's won a Conn Smythe, somebody who has made deep playoff runs, somebody who is a veteran voice in the locker room. So a lot has been focused on what he brings off ice, but I don't want to overlook what he brings to the ice. Now, I know he's a veteran. In hockey years, he's considered very old, but I think Ryan O'Reilly really has what the Predators are looking for. He's a great two-way player, which I think benefits a team that has some younger players that are still working to develop that aspect of their game. There's a conversation about, will Ryan O'Reilly be the 1C for the Nashville Predators, or has Cody Glass done enough, or will he do enough in training camp where maybe he will get that opportunity for that big role? So either way, you're definitely going to see a lot of Ryan O'Reilly on the ice for the Nashville Predators.
How about the defense core? Do you think they will be better this year? And how will the change in style affect this team's ability to defend?
Yeah, the defense really has had an extreme makeover. It started at the trade deadline when the Predators lost Mattias Ekholm, who is one of the best defensemen in Nashville Predators history. Of course, we got Tyson Barrie in that deal, and he brings an element of offense that maybe Mattias Ekholm's game didn't have. So you're looking at maybe a little bit more offensive-minded as far as the defensive core. You have Luke Schenn, who's a little bit of a heavy hitter, which I think brings that physicality. But you're also looking at a Predators team who relies a lot on Roman Josi. And Josi, missed some games with injury last season, but he really is such an important part of the Predators offense for a defenseman. So much goes through Roman Josi. And so I think you're going to see them try to focus more on getting him more involved in things and hoping that kind of the back end can solidify the defensive end for the Predators.
And how about the power play? I would assume, guys like O'Reilly, guys like Josi will play a big role there. Do you think that Andrew Brunette will have a slightly different approach to the power play than his predecessor did?
We can certainly hope so. Statistically speaking, last season was a down year for the Nashville Predators on the power play. And so this year, I think that's one of the things that fans are most looking forward to with Andrew Brunette coming in, because of course he worked with the power play with the New Jersey Devils. They've got a ton of firepower on their special teams. So what is he going to do with this team? I think you're right. So much is going to go through Roman Josi, Ryan O'Reilly. There are also a couple of young players that may do enough to see some time on the power play. Think about players like Luke Evangelista, maybe Phil Tomasino, Cody Glass did a lot net front on the power play at the end of the season. So I think it's going to be an interesting mix of veterans and youth on the power play. And what I like about it is with Andrew Brunette coming in, it's really who's going to earn it. Everybody's going to have to earn their minutes with this new head coach.
Let me ask you a little bit about the transition from David Poile to Barry Trotz, because this is actually the first change in general managers in the history of this franchise.
That's right.
How has that gone? How much input, if any, does Poile still have on this team? And what is the working relationship like between Poile and Trotz?
It has been such an interesting relationship to watch through this transition. You know, this announcement was made, end of the season sort of, but Barry Trotz has been involved. This was kind of something that they brought him in. He was involved in conversations at the trade deadline and had input in that. When it comes to the trade, Barry Trotz was very involved in the decisions that the Nashville Predators made. David Poile really brought him in and opened the cupboard and said, let's walk through all of these big things together and see what's happening. And I think that's been an amazing experience for Barry Trotz. Of course, they have a long-standing working relationship as GM and head coach. So this is a little bit of a different dynamic, but it's been so beneficial, I think, for Trotz. There is no question now. Barry Trotz is the general manager of the Nashville Predators, and he is not afraid to make big moves. One of David Poile's dream moves was signing Matt Duchene. Barry Trotz bought out Matt Duchene. So he is definitely running the show. Of course, David Poile is still a part of the team in an advisory capacity. Word is, though, he does not have an office. So how much he is going to be involved kind of remains to be seen. I think he will always be an ear for Barry Trotz, which is a wonderful opportunity. David Poile, one of the winningest GMs in history. So this is a great benefit for the Predators. It's a great benefit for Barry Trotz as he tries his hand at general managing.
Should be interesting. And after watching Barry Trotz up close for a few years on Long Island, definitely pulling for him. Yeah. Any prospects, any young players who have a good shot at making this Predators team this year?
I think out of training camp, one of the young players that we saw at the end of last season has a very good shot, and that is Luke Evangelista. He played 24 games in the regular season, went back and played in the postseason for the AHL Milwaukee Admirals, had a fantastic postseason. So he's definitely a player to keep an eye on. Another one is Joakim Kimmel. He hasn't played a ton of North American hockey yet, but he did play in the postseason in Milwaukee. He may be a call-up this season for the Nashville Predators. Of course, they had Juuso Parssinen, they had Phil Tomasino. So those are some players who I think are really going to be battling for a spot. There's definitely a number of prospects to keep an eye on, whether they make it up to Nashville or whether they're playing in Milwaukee.
And why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
You can listen to Locked On Predators anywhere you get your podcast, and on YouTube. We are on Twitter, X, however you want to call that app. We are at LO_Predators. And you can find me on that same app at AnnK_Mama on Ice.
All right. And thank you so much. Always a pleasure talking hockey with you.
Thanks, Gil.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready for the NFL season with incredible offers from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Plus, all customers who bet $5 will get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Now is the best time to join FanDuel, the app that is easy to use, and you can be on everything from point spreads to player props and more. And hey, with NFL Sunday Ticket, you could follow any of the 32 NFL teams regardless of where you live. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season with an offer you won't want to miss. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.